We often consider freedom and equality to be synonymous, core values that must both exist if we are to enjoy any semblance of democracy. But there are different ways of defining equality. Since the Enlightenment, many societies have moved towards a concept of equality that is rooted in giving people the same opportunities and freedoms to succeed. This means equality before the rule of law, and ensuring careers are open to people on the basis of their talents rather than their gender, race, religion or social class. This idea of equality of opportunity certainly doesn't contradict the concept of freedom. On the contrary, the two reinforce one another. But in recent years, we've gradually moved away from advancing equality of opportunity towards advancing equality of outcome and equality in material respects like wealth. Many people condemn income inequality as an unqualified negative and view differing outcomes as evidence of structural oppression which must be addressed through government policy. Of course, discrimination remains far too common in all societies, but differing outcomes between groups are not on their own evidence of discrimination. Economies taking equality of outcome as their guiding principle would have to be organised so that everyone ends at the finish line at the same time, rather than everyone starting at the beginning line at the same time. This definition of equality raises serious problems for freedom. Why? Well, because human beings are different. This is one of the great things about us. We have different talents and abilities, different interests and different priorities. And all of these differences are reflected in a free society by the huge array of goods and services on offer, from the different businesses, plays, music, restaurant, technologies, new inventions and so on. It's hard to imagine how any society with free choice could possibly end up with everyone doing the same thing or getting the same outcome. And as a result, implementing equality of outcome would involve social engineering on a dramatic scale. We would have to substantially limit the diversity of our population and individual preferences, potentially driving people away from what they're best at or find most fulfilling. When social justice demands equal outcomes for all groups without concern for inputs, it becomes unjust. It might even prove impossible in practice because, surprise, surprise, people don't always behave as the central planners want them to. In the Scandinavian countries, where governments have taken unparalleled steps to reduce gender inequality through affirmative action programmes and generous shared parental leave, we find, somewhat paradoxically, that the workforce is more segregated by gender, not less. Studies even suggest bigger personality differences between the sexes in more gender egalitarian countries. And this is why the pursuit of equal outcomes would almost certainly involve sacrificing individual choice and happiness. I write and edit articles for a living. I might well have earned more had I gone into a different career path, but that was a trade-off that I was willing to make because I valued having interesting work more than the additional money in my pay packet. But other people might disagree and prefer to trade off job satisfaction for better pay. Pursuing equality of outcome, above all, means second-guessing these kinds of preferences. Finally, those who fixate on wealth gaps often confuse inequality with poverty. A myth has sprung up that free markets not only perpetuate inequality, but allow the rich to benefit at the expense of the poor. But in reality, nothing could be further from the truth. Wealth is not a zero-sum game, and nowhere are the rich richer and the poor poorer than in societies without a functioning free market, whether in feudal societies where social rank determines position, or modern, centrally planned economies where success is determined by access to government. Wherever free markets have been allowed to operate, ordinary people have been able to attain levels of living previous generations could only have dreamt of. And in a free market, it is surprisingly difficult for individuals to amass great wealth without creating something of value to others. What is best for civilization is not always best for the inequality data. Throughout history, plagues and wars have left greater inequality in their wake. But in China, the spread of market institutions over the past few decades has gone hand in hand with rapid and unprecedented increases in human welfare. Since the late 70s, almost 1 billion Chinese people have been lifted out of extreme poverty. But it's no coincidence that income inequality in China also skyrocketed during this period. Granted, the rich may get richer at a faster rate and end up with a bigger share of a much bigger pie, but the poor benefit most of all from being freed from grinding poverty, and as consumers they benefit from the wider array of affordable products on offer. Instead, we should focus on widening access to good quality education and ensuring that more people, including the poor, can tap into opportunities for their own enrichment. Obsessing about inequality can be a red herring that obscures the miracle of consumer capitalism, and at worst it can be actively harmful.